Why do we keep insisting that men and women are the same? Why have the most obvious differences become taboo to mention? And who truly benefits when everyone is forced to live as if there were no distinctions in instinct, perception, or roles between the sexes? Have you ever felt that something in many relationships seems off, yet no one dares to speak it aloud? That there are truths everyone can see, but if you acknowledge them, you're labeled as toxic, outdated, even ostracized. We live in an age where emotions are glorified over reason, where differences are called injustices rather than being seen as a natural part of life. But what if we're wrong? What if the truth doesn't lie in what's being shouted, but in what's being silenced? What if the tensions between men and women aren't created by society, but rooted deep within ourselves? This is not a debate about right or wrong. It is not an accusation. It is a reminder that there are laws of nature you may not like, but you will either live with them or be crushed by them. If you're ready to confront what is uncomfortable, paradoxical, and unspeakable, then it's time to begin. 1. Women are governed by instinct, not reason. Imagine sitting alone in a coffee shop, quietly observing and wondering, why are some decisions women make so difficult to explain with logic? Why are their reactions so emotionally charged, their choices seemingly inconsistent? And the bigger question, do women truly live by emotion rather than reason? Schopenhauer didn't beat around the bush. He asserted that women do not operate through rationality the way men do. They are governed by instinct, survival instinct, maternal instinct, and the instinct to attract the opposite sex. And this isn't an accusation, it's an observation, a conclusion drawn from patterns he saw repeated throughout history, culture, and personal experience. According to him, women are not drawn to philosophy, ideals, or the pure beauty of intellect. Instead, they seek the practical, safety, stability, protection. Every emotion, decision, or behavior revolves around biological imperatives: how to survive, how to be loved, how to be chosen. One of his most controversial statements was, "Women do not create culture. They merely live within it." It may sound harsh, but set aside your outrage for a moment to consider the underlying question. Are we willing to acknowledge that instinct guides more decisions than reason, especially when it comes to sexuality and love? Schopenhauer saw in women a very different kind of intelligence, not born from logical reasoning, but from emotional sensitivity. They don't need to argue, they read the room. They don't rely on debate, they feel subtle shifts. In their world, feeling it at the right time matters more than understanding it correctly. Carl Jung later echoed this idea through his archetypes: men being outward, rational, women being inward, intuitive. What he called the Anima, the feminine aspect of the male psyche, is the place where instinct, emotion, and softness reside. It's the very realm in which women live daily. But does that make it negative? Not at all. The problem only arises when we try to deny it, because when society demands that women think like men, make decisions like logical machines, we're asking them to live against their own nature. And what's the cost? Stress, role confusion, relationships unraveling because no one understands the system the other is operating on. A man searching for logic in a woman's behavior often ends up frustrated because he's looking for reason where none exists, while the woman is reacting to a sense of threat, abandonment, or emotional injury. The man is still waiting for a clear explanation. The result? Tension, misunderstanding, disconnection. Schopenhauer never said women were inferior. He said they were different. And if you can keep calm enough to hear the hard truth without reacting emotionally, you'll realize something. The more society evolves and tries to neutralize gender, the more biological differences stand out. You can't erase truth with slogans. You can't teach a lioness to hunt like a lion, because she wasn't designed for that. Each gender has a different nature. Both are necessary and powerful in their own way. The problem arises only when we force someone to live against the operating system they were born with. And Schopenhauer, in all his harshness, stated this plainly nearly 200 years ago. So, when you see a woman reacting emotionally, don't try to apply logic. Understand that she isn't wrong. She's simply living according to her natural design, and it's that very design that has ensured humanity's survival to this day. When men live for ideals, women live for reality. When men build empires, women keep them from collapsing. When men dream of the future, women ensure the present keeps running smoothly. That is not inferiority, it is instinctive wisdom, a kind of intelligence men, for all their logic, still struggle to replicate. 2. Men and women have different life goals. Imagine two people standing at a crossroads in life. One gazes toward the horizon. The other examines a map in their hand. Both want to go far, but one lives for the journey, the other for the destination. This is the image Schopenhauer used to describe the difference between men and women in their life purposes. In Schopenhauer's view, men are built to pursue greatness, ideals, legacy, something timeless and monumental. They don't live to enjoy the present but to shape the future, to carve their name into something larger than themselves. And women, they don't need statues to feel valuable. They live to sustain, to protect, stabilize, and preserve what already exists. They don't dream of building castles, they make sure the castle doesn't collapse. This difference, Schopenhauer argued, is not the result of education or social bias. As many might think, it is a natural division of roles, an ancient mechanism encoded by biology. Men hunt, explore, and compete. Women guard the home, nurture life, and maintain survival rhythms. Each is oriented toward a different form of success. Men seek recognition from the world, while women seek safety within it. Look at what men are willing to sacrifice. They give up time, health, youth, all to chase something intangible, achievement, status, meaning. They endure failure and fight tirelessly, because in their minds, a life without a legacy is a life without purpose. Schopenhauer described men as beings stretched toward the future, never enough, never stopping. They are prisoners of ambition. In contrast, women live in the present. They observe, choose, and weigh options. They are less likely to get swept up in long, uncertain games because they are designed to sustain, not to disrupt. Their goal is stability, emotional, material, and social. Thus, women tend to choose the safer path, and they measure the value of life not by what they conquer, but by what they preserve. This doesn't mean women lack dreams, but those dreams often take a different shape, not dazzling like stage lights, but quiet like the glow of a kitchen fire. While men hunger for admiration from the crowd, women simply need someone strong enough to trust. Each pursues a different version of meaning. Carl Jung later captured this difference in symbolic terms. Men are drawn to the light of external goals, while women are bound to the circle of connection. One turns outward to the world, the other inward to the soul. The problem is that modern society, in its push to erase gender differences, has started to place male-oriented goals on women. They're encouraged to chase power, status, and achievement as a way to prove their worth. But has anyone stopped to ask, is that truly what women want? Or are they just borrowing someone else's map to find themselves? When men lose their sense of direction, they feel empty. But when women are pulled away from the center of their instincts, they don't just grow tired, they lose their ability to maintain inner balance. And worse still, in the chase between two opposing worlds, no one ends up happy. Schopenhauer was criticized for being anti-woman, but in truth, he was defending difference. He didn't say men were better, only that they were different. And if we're brave enough to face that truth, we'll see that differing life purposes don't make one lesser than the other, they make both essential. One builds the ship, the other holds the compass. One looks to the sky, the other keeps feet grounded. One travels far, the other keeps the lantern burning for those who leave. This world doesn't need everyone to be the same, it only needs everyone to live true to their nature. And to do that, we must first admit, men and women do not live for the same things. And it is precisely this truth that creates harmony and chaos. Free. Women possess indirect power. They don't need to hold power to influence those who do. If power is a flame, men often choose to wield the torch, public, bright, blazing. Women, they are the ones who kindle the fire. They don't stand in the middle of the battlefield, but they decide who steps out and why. Schopenhauer once said, women do not rule through reason or force, but through influence, silent, subtle, yet rooted deeper than any political power. Many resent how bluntly he said it, but set aside emotion for a moment and look at history, at reality. You'll see this pattern repeating through every era. From bedrooms to boardrooms, women don't need to sit in the prime minister's chair to sway a nation. They only need to whisper the right words to the one who sits in it. They don't need to fight for the microphone to shape public opinion. They mold perception through emotion, through beauty, through choices that seem harmless but subtly redirect even the strongest man's path. This isn't manipulation, it's biology. It's a survival instinct honed over thousands of years, when women couldn't compete with men physically for survival, but still needed to protect themselves, their children, their resources, and their social standing. They were forced to become refined. They developed the ability to read emotions, to influence environments, to shape behavior from the shadows. A man may conquer hundreds on the battlefield, but he may completely fall apart in front of a woman who knows how to use silence, a gaze, or a perfectly timed sentence. Why? Because men are trained for confrontation. Women play chess. The indirect power of women is a form of silent dominance, not through commands, but through choices, not through force, but through guidance. You don't feel like you're being controlled, and that's exactly why you follow. Look at how society functions. Men build the foundations, design the systems, enact the laws, but women set the moral standards, define what is attractive, trustworthy, or worth pursuing. These standards are not written on paper, but men chase them as if survival depended on it. From the shirt you choose, to the car you drive, to the job you work hard to get, how much of that is truly for you? And how much is for the approving glance of one or a few women? That's invisible power, power that changes your behavior without anyone needing to give an order. Schopenhauer never said women lack intelligence. He said their intelligence functions differently, softer, but more effective in a human society where emotion often dictates behavior more than logic. He claimed, men shape the outside world, women shape the world within men. You might not agree, but think about this. Why can a successful, wealthy, powerful man become emotionally weak in front of the woman he loves? Why do so many of a man's life-changing decisions revolve around marriage, children, and love? That is how women influence without wielding power. They don't command, they create drive. They don't lecture from podiums, they whisper to the heart. Carl Jung also touched on this in his theory of the Anima and Animus, wherein every man resides an unconscious image of the ideal woman, the Anima. And his behavior is deeply shaped by this internal image. The woman in your life isn't the one directing your path. It's the feminine symbol within you that moves you to act in her name. Today, as women are encouraged to step into leadership, to take charge, to become visible, they still carry the old form of power, but now it's legitimized. This creates a paradox. Society believes it has achieved equality, but in reality, it has shifted from a model of direct male power to a model of emotional influence controlled by women, yet few dare to call it what it is. This isn't a bad thing, but if we're unaware of it, we risk being led by an invisible hand, believing we are free, when in truth, we are merely reacting to emotional cues long embedded in our psyche. Schopenhauer was heavily criticized for offending women, but perhaps what truly unsettled people was not the offense, but that he dared to expose a form of power society refuses to acknowledge. And that is the most unsettling truth. Power does not need recognition to exist. It only needs to be effective. 4. Different perceptions of time between men and women. Have you ever wondered why men are often obsessed with the future, while women seem to care more about the present? What seems like a simple question touches on one of the most profound differences between the sexes, a difference that, according to Schopenhauer, stems not from habit, but from biology and psychology, an uncomfortable truth that's hard to digest. According to him, men live for what hasn't happened yet. They look ahead, set goals, and sacrifice the present in exchange for a vision they themselves aren't even certain of. They endure, push themselves, dive into challenges, not because they don't know how to enjoy life, but because they believe the value of life lies in what's left behind, a legacy, an achievement, a name remembered long after they're gone. Women, on the other hand, Schopenhauer believed, are programmed to live in the now. They don't dream of distant glory. Instead, they observe what's happening, choose what can ensure safety, stability, and nourishment. They don't aim for something grand on the horizon. They try to make today a little more breathable. Not because they lack ambition, but because their survival instinct prioritizes stability above all. This isn't a comparison of who is more noble. In fact, Schopenhauer believed that because women aren't haunted by the need for greatness or perfection, They live more lightly, less prone to existential crises or inner emptiness. Observe real life. A man can give up his health, sleep, even love in pursuit of an ideal. He believes that unless he achieves that thing, he doesn't deserve peace. Meanwhile, a woman may leave a relationship even if it has potential, if the present moment makes her feel unsafe. For her, stability can't be postponed, it must be felt now. A man's inner world is filled with plans, visions, ambitions. He builds the future as if it's the only place worth living in. Women are different. They invest emotionally in the present. They notice small details, sense shifts in atmosphere, read people's moods, and make decisions based on what is, not what might be. This explains why, in relationships, women often value consistency in behavior more than beautiful promises for the future. You could say you'll provide for her Sunday, but if today you make her feel neglected, that Sunday means nothing. Schopenhauer didn't believe one sex was superior to the other. He merely pointed out that while men are driven by the desire to escape the present in order to create something grand, women are the ones who keep the world standing because they care for what's happening now, not what might be. From his point of view, this fundamental difference in how time is experienced gives rise to nearly opposite ways of living. One side gambles everything for a dream. The other invests in what can be held. One lives to create what doesn't yet exist, the other to protect what already does. What does this mean in today's world, where women are increasingly stepping into roles as strategists, leaders, builders? Is there truly a shift, or is it simply that instinct is being suppressed, while biology continues its quiet work beneath the surface? Schopenhauer would not be surprised if he said that, no matter how successful women become, they still prioritize emotional safety in relationships, and that men, no matter how many achievements they collect, still cannot stop because what they chase is never ending. What's important to understand is that both instincts are valid, but if we fail to recognize this difference in how time is perceived, we'll always be disappointed that the other doesn't see the world as we do. Men will think women lack vision. Women will think men lack presence. This isn't a flaw, it's nature. The conclusion: we don't need to be the same to live together. But to do that, we must understand how the other sees time. And from there, accept that sometimes living for tomorrow and living for today are two parallel battles, both equally essential to keep this world turning. 5. Love is a biological illusion. Have you ever wondered why people who once loved each other deeply can become total strangers? Why something that once made your heart race can, after just a few years or even a few months, turn cold and indifferent? To Schopenhauer, this isn't a tragedy, it's the nature of things. Because love, in his view, was never real in the way we romantically imagine it to be. According to Schopenhauer, love is not the result of soul connection or some grand destiny. It is simply a biological strategy, programmed into the human instinct by nature for one sole purpose: the continuation of the species. Sounds cold, harsh, it is, but that's the point of his philosophy, to strip away illusion and expose the essence. Schopenhauer believed that all the feelings we label as love, the desire, the longing, the passion, the romance, are nothing more than a biological trap set by nature. When two people are drawn to each other, it's not because of some deep spiritual resonance between souls. It's because of genetic compatibility aimed at healthy reproduction. Men are attracted to youth and vitality, signals of fertility. Women seek strength and stability, indicators of protection and provision. And the irony, that feeling, no matter how intense, doesn't last. Because once the biological objective has been met, sexual connection, or even procreation, nature no longer has a reason to maintain the illusion of romance. The emotions fade, the truth surfaces, and people fall into the same cycle of disappointment, separation, and the search for the next, special someone, who, in reality, is just another candidate for the same biological equation. Schopenhauer didn't stop at analyzing behavior. He went further, claiming that love is nature's highest deception. It doesn't serve personal happiness. It serves the species. It makes you think you're in love with someone because they're meant for you. But in truth, your unconscious instinct has simply recognized traits in them that would result in stronger offspring. Once you begin to see love through this lens, everything looks different. Why do couples who once loved passionately still end up divorcing? Why do people fall head over heels only to wake up full of regret or doubt? Because you never loved them as a person, but as a genetic match, and once your instinct determines that the goal has been achieved, it withdraws the magic. Worse still, Schopenhauer believed love clouds reason. It drives people to act against their own interests. How many people abandon careers, change their lives, or endure pain, all in the name of love? How many people chase toxic relationships, demands, heartbreak, just to recapture a fleeting feeling? Schopenhauer would say, that's not love, that's instinct manipulating your reason through illusion. To him, love isn't beautiful, it isn't noble, and it isn't permanent. It is a temporary biological tactic, designed to make humans forget reason and surrender freedom, only to be left with disillusionment when the illusion ends. And that is the greatest tragedy of all. We're not taught that love is temporary. We're taught that love is eternal, what Schopenhauer believed is one of humanity's greatest illusions. Perhaps that's why he never married, why he never believed in romantic love, why he constantly warned others, if you want to live with clarity, you must see the truth beneath the sweet emotions. And that truth is, you don't love the way you think you love. 6. Women are not suited to lead society. In an era where the phrase gender equality is repeated like an unquestionable truth, anyone who questions women's capacity to lead society is immediately labeled outdated, discriminatory, or patriarchal. But Schopenhauer didn't flinch. On the contrary, he stated bluntly, coldly, and without concession that women should not and cannot hold the role of societal leaders. And the reason, according to him, is not societal prejudice but natural essence. Schopenhauer argued that in order for a society to be stable, to develop, and to sustain itself, the person at the helm must possess certain traits: rationality, objectivity, long-term vision, and the ability to suppress personal ego for the common good. These, he believed, were qualities primarily found in men, beings programmed by nature to impose order, build structures, and pursue ideals beyond themselves. In contrast, he believed women, guided more by emotion, instinct, and present-day necessities, would face great limitations in managing systems that extend beyond the personal or familial realm. Women, according to Schopenhauer, prioritize stability, safety, and personal emotion over systemic reasoning were abstract principles, traits essential to leadership. This, he emphasized, is not a criticism, but a division of natural labor. In his view, society is like a living organism. Each part has its own function. Men lay the foundation, women maintain the structure. Men determine direction, women ensure nothing collapses. The issue, according to Schopenhauer, isn't about who is better, but about who is more suited to specific tasks. A leader, he said, must be able to detach emotions from decision-making, must endure pressure, show patience, and not be swayed by fleeting influences. Meanwhile, women, guided by inward focus, sensitivity, and emotional awareness, tend to favor what feels right over what is logically right. And here's where the conflict begins. Schopenhauer offered an example. If a leader makes decisions based on pity rather than justice, on personal feelings instead of collective interest, it will lead to disorder, favoritism, and a breakdown of organizational principles. He did not deny that compassion has its place in life, but he insisted it cannot serve as the compass for governing a society. His argument, of course, is heavily criticized today, but one question remains worth contemplating. Does the emotionalization of political and societal decision-making contribute to instability? When rationality is traded for comfort or sentimental inclusion, is that truly progress? Or a detour from how natural systems are designed to operate? Schopenhauer also stressed that, historically, women's influence was never found in official titles, but in the background. They did not lead directly, but they influenced leaders through emotion, allure, emotional intelligence, and the subtle grasp of human nature. According to him, this is where real power lies, and thus, pushing women into overt leadership roles is, paradoxically, an act that goes against their natural strength. He compared societal leadership to steering a ship across a vast ocean. It demands mental coldness, emotional endurance, and the ability to do what no one wants but everyone needs. This, he believed, women are not naturally equipped for. due to psychological structure and instinctual priorities. Naturally, today, there are countless examples that challenge his view: women as CEOs, politicians, organizational leaders, but Schopenhauer would ask, how many of those succeed through rational detachment, and how many succeed by mastering the indirect, relational power women have always wielded, within systems still designed by men? He did not deny women's competence, but he opposed unnecessary role reversal when each gender already has its own intrinsic power, suited for different responsibilities. In his mind, the world is stable when men lead and women support, and when we try to reverse this order without understanding its roots, society does not evolve, it unravels. Perhaps the real question Schopenhauer left us with is not, can women lead? But rather, are we confusing ability with nature? And is true equality about making everyone the same, or allowing each to flourish in what they were made for? 7. The modern world, evolution or rebellion against nature. In today's world, where feminism has surged and gender equality is championed as a core principle in policy, education, and social life, few dare to raise a fundamental question: are all these changes truly the evolution of humanity, or are they slowly steering society away from its inherent natural design? Arthur Schopenhauer, with his cold and unapologetic reasoning, once offered a view that runs completely counter to the spirit of the age, that many of the so-called advancements society celebrates are, in fact, unnatural regressions. According to Schopenhauer, the instincts, biological structures, and psychological makeup of men and women are not merely different, they were shaped by nature for entirely different purposes. Men are driven by reason, ambition, and the desire to transcend themselves, to build, conquer, and leave behind a legacy. Women, on the other hand, he saw as beings deeply anchored to the practical aspects of life, acting from emotion and intuition, prioritizing survival, stability, and security for themselves and their offspring. And this, Schopenhauer believed, is where the modern world has gone astray. When society begins imposing a singular standard of behavior, morality, and absolute equality on both sexes, it simultaneously denies the very biological foundations upon which it was once built. A prime example is the way women are encouraged to compete on equal footing with men in every field: politics, military, business, science, yet the values tied to their natural roles, motherhood, emotional nurturing, care for the home, are gradually being dismissed, even ridiculed as regressive. According to Schopenhauer's logic, this is not liberation. It is a subtle coercion that pushes women further from their innate nature. He warned that when both sexes are forced to operate under the same value system, the inevitable result is imbalance. Men become hesitant, passive, disoriented under conflicting new norms, while women grow increasingly dissatisfied and stressed, burdened by expectations that conflict with their emotional structure and biological instincts. Schopenhauer did not deny women's intelligence or capability. He simply argued that the differences in purpose, motivation, and emotional fulfillment between the sexes cannot be altered through slogans or education. And if society insists on trying, it will produce individuals who live contrary to their natural inclinations, resulting in identity conflict, existential crisis, and widespread psychological distress. Today, we witness a sharp rise in rates of depression and mental breakdowns in both men and women, especially among women in their 30s and 40s, who are expected to excel in their careers, maintain a family, and simultaneously embody the image of the modern woman. Could this be the outcome of a society that imposes an ideal of progress without first questioning the natural limits? Schopenhauer would not be surprised. For him, happiness was never nature's goal. Nature only concerns itself with survival and reproduction, and all psychological and physiological constructs in humans, particularly between the sexes, are designed to serve that purpose. Anything beyond those limits, no matter how noble the label, freedom, equality, modernity, is, to him, a rebellion against nature. However, this does not mean Schopenhauer rejected all change. He acknowledged the importance of creating an environment that respects and protects the dignity of women. But he would stress, protection does not mean sameness. Fairness does not mean identical treatment. Perhaps what is needed is not a continued push for a genderless revolution, but a sincere and lucid re-acknowledgement of difference. True evolution does not lie in making the sexes identical, but in allowing each to fully live out their nature in mutual respect and balance. As Schopenhauer once wrote, nature does not care for human ideals. It only cares for efficient functioning, and perhaps it's time for modern society to pause and ask, are we truly progressing, or are we rebelling against ourselves? We can avoid the truth, we can call it outdated, regressive, or irrelevant to the times, but truth does not need your agreement to continue existing. You can build a society where everyone is made to be the same, where emotions are placed above reason, and instinct is treated as something to be erased. But in the end, essence will return to its rightful role. Men and women are not the same and never will be. Not because one is better or weaker, but because nature created the two sexes to serve entirely different purposes. When we try to impose the same mold on two opposing essences, what we get is not fairness, but chaos. We create weak men, exhausted women, and relationships full of calculation and pain, not because they didn't try, but because they were trying to go against something already encoded in their very flesh and blood. Truth does not exist to flatter your ego. It exists to wake you up. And sometimes, waking up hurts more than staying asleep. But if you've listened this far, perhaps you no longer want to stay asleep. So remember this, true freedom is not about doing whatever you like. It is about having the courage to look truth in the eye, even when it's not what you want to hear.